right. Hi, Landri. Today's stream is entitled Geometry Period 3 Live Stream for Landri, Race for the Cure. Make your donations in this cup right here.
Did you hear about that new virus that's spreading in China?
Nope.
It's some brand new virus that nobody knows what it is.
Exciting. All right.
What's it called? The plague.
So we have a shared side, BD, between the two triangles. Great. Now, can we prove these triangles congruent? Yes or no? Yes, we can by side, side, side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that triangle ABD is congruent to the other triangle. ABD is this left side triangle. And then this other one I have to write in a certain order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up sides and angles. Notice that angle A, this angle here, is formed by the side that has 2 tick marks on it and 1 tick mark. So I'm going to look for that same angle on the other triangle, which is angle C. So A and C will go together. Angle B on the left side triangle is this angle right here. And that angle is going to match up with the angle that's formed by 2 tick marks and 3 tick marks on the other triangle. So that's going to be here. 2 tick marks, 3 tick marks. So B and D match up. And then lastly is this angle down here. D on the first triangle is going to match up with B on the second triangle. So you should have it written in that order. Notice that what we're doing is matching up letters here. So just because I have ABD written here, you could have DBA, you could have BAD, whatever you want over here. Just make sure it matches up with the correct letters. So your A should go with your C, your B should go with your D, and your D on the left should go with your B on the right.
So how many points is it if we got that
Great
wrong?
question. We're not done yet. We're going to say that's by, and the way we said these are congruent was by side, 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 because that's what we were given. So all together, I want 1 point for writing shared side. Okay, whether you marked it or not, I don't care. I would prefer you to do it in the future though. 1 point for getting all the letters and all the letters over here matched up. Okay, so 2 points total. If you were to miss one of these, like you switched your B's and your D's or something, right, that would end up making 2 wrong. It's kind of like matching, right, when you have on a test. If you screw up one, you probably screw up another, right? So instead of taking off 2/3 of a point, which would hurt you more and be harder to calculate if you miss one of these, what we're actually going to do is just take off a half a point.
Are they all just 1 point?
Yeah, I missed the whole thing.
So then,
And then side, side, side will be worth 2 points. Yeah.
that's for 2.
Yep.
Two?
So a total of 5 points on this question. Ah.
So
Oh
if we,
my God.
I got side, side.
if we mark the shared side, does that mean,
Did you write it?
no, I didn't write
Nope, you need to write it. Take off a half.
I got side, side, A.
We weren't given any angles, and there's no way to tell the angles are the same until you know the triangle is congruent.
Oh.
So,
You practiced 5.
once we know the triangles are congruent, right, then we know that they're going to have matching angles, and that's what we did next. We matched up which angle went with which, right? Because if the triangles are congruent, their parts should be the same. The question is which parts? Well, these 2 parts, and these 2 parts, and these 2 parts. But before we prove that they're congruent, we know nothing about the angles, and there's no way to get that information.
Do we have to write the stuff on the triangle?
On the diagram, no.
Okay.
No.
Chilling.
We see how to grade this?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for all the rest. How do you feel about number 1? Do you feel like you understand it now if you didn't then? And if you understood it then, do you really understand it now?
Yes.
Do you, I didn't write shared side, but I put out the lines, is that what point off?
Half point. I will be nice and give you a half point. I'm not counting any points here, so I'm not going to take off any points if you're missing stuff. But if you do have it, I will allow it to give you some influence over here.
Have you added anything to that wall?
Nope.
Ceiling?
Nope. All right, not a ton. We've only been here a little bit. Number 2. All right, so before we can prove anything congruent, our first step is just to write down what we know to be congruent. And we should know that we have a shared side here. So I need to see that. So 1 point for writing shared side. If you labeled it but didn't write it, half a point. Now there's no other way to get any other information about our angles or sides here. We don't know that AD and BC are the same length. We do not know that. We don't know that these angles are going to be the same necessarily. So we do not have enough information to get this done. We have angle, side, side, which we know is not one of our things. So what we're going to write is unknown. Or something to that effect. That's going to be worth 2 points. So it's the same as when we wrote side, side, side above. That's our reasoning, right? But we cannot write congruency, so I'm not giving any points for that. So that's worth 3 points. Does everybody see why that one doesn't work? That's it.
Yeah.
Now we can't do HL. Remember, HL is hypotenuse leg. That requires a hypotenuse and a leg. And this is not a hypotenuse because it's not across from a 90-degree angle. It could be 90. We don't know, right? Obviously, in the diagram, it doesn't look like it is. It looks to be deceiving. We don't know if this is 90, right? So we don't know if this is a hypotenuse or not, so we can't use HL. We have ASS, which is not one of our theorems. Ass and ass backwards do not work. Number 3. Once again, whether we can prove it congruent or not doesn't matter at this point. All we need to get is as much information as possible. And we know that these angles will be the same by vertical angles, right? So I need to see that. That's going to be worth 1 point.
Wait, so if we just wrote it but didn't write vertical angles, it's half a point?
So if you put it on the diagram but didn't write it, you have to take off half. If you just wrote vertical angles but didn't label the diagram, that's fine. Yeah.
I put VAT.
That's fine. Vertical angle theorem also
We're
works.
probably gonna lose by 10.
Yep. So, no other way to get information about this. We can't prove that BC and CE are the same. Same thing with AC and CD. We can't prove that. Angle, angle, angle is all we have, which we know is not one of our theorems. So this is another unknown. And that'll be worth 2 points. How do we feel about that one? Angle, angle, angle does not work. And again, when I ask you how you feel about it, I don't mean how do you feel about it based on your grade. I mean, how do you feel about it now? How do you see it now? So angle, angle, angle is not enough to prove being congruent. And here's an example of why. So if I gave you 2 equilateral triangles, that means all sides and all angles are the same, right? Now, I could have a situation like this, where this triangle is just a bigger equilateral than this one, right? Does that make sense? So all the angles could be 60s, all the same. But we have different sides, right? Which would make it not congruent, right? You see how that is? Yeah.
I see how number 3 is unknown, but how is number 2
Great. I'm glad we're going back to that. All right. So number 2 is unknown because ASS doesn't work as one of our theorems. Same thing with SSA, right? ASS and SSA, ass and ass backwards, they don't work. And the reason for that is a little bit harder to illustrate than the angle. So let's see if I can do it with this diagram. So we'll know those will be parallel, but we know
The wind hurts.
let's see if I can mess around with this. All right, so we know that if we extend these, we can get some clearer picture of what's going on. All right.
Buddy Dave.
All right, so we've got this information. These are going to be my vertical, right? Same thing here. Now we'd like to be able to say that these 2 are going to match because these are parallel, and we can do that. These will end up being parallel. So this angle and this angle will be the same.
What's your PPS?
We do not know, however, if these angles will be the same. If these will be parallel.
Shared side.
Here, let me draw a different diagram. I've got too many lines going on.
I say we just crumple this up and recycle it.
Nope.
Dude, I missed 8 on a 3 problem. You missed out.
All right, so we have 2 triangles with this information.
They missed all 40s.
Because I don't know this angle here, that angle could be any angle value, right? So imagine this angle bigger than this angle, right? If these are different, then that's going to make this side a different length. It's going to change things. Now, that might be easier to illustrate. So if I've got something like this. So this is this triangle. If I change that angle, right? Let me zoom out. If I change this angle right here, that'll result in the other side being much bigger. Do we see that? And since I don't know this one, that's going to change what this side length is going to be. Does that make sense? So I don't know this angle, which means it could be any angle. It could be this angle, which means I'd have a triangle of this size, or it could be this angle, which would be a triangle of this size. So pretend this triangle was this one, and this triangle was that one. Notice the sides are both the same on both, right? But the angle here, because I don't know it, is going to be different for each triangle. Okay? So this angle being unknown is what's going to change it to be, maybe it could look like this, maybe it could look like that, which would be two different triangles. Does that make sense? Okay. It's confusing because this angle here kind of limits it. It turns out there's only going to be two ways to make this triangle. There's going to be option A that has this angle and then a certain angle over here, and there's going to be option B that has this angle and then a different angle over there. And there's only two ways to make that happen.
What was that?
So it's kind of hard to see. So it's not like there could be lots of different triangles, right? It isn't. There's only going to be two. But there's two possible ways it could be. So we can't prove that it's congruent. Okay. I know it's a hard way to look at, but know that ASS does not. Okay. And I apologize for my voice today, guys.
Do we have a quiz at the end of this week?
I don't. What?
Do we have a quiz at the end of this week?
That is yet to be seen. All right. Number 4. All right. We are given that this angle and this angle goes together, and that this angle and this angle goes together. We also know that this side AC is shared between the two triangles, so I'm going to write that down. So I know that we have a shared side. Now, there's no other way to get information here or here. We don't know that these are 90, so don't put that. Just because it looks like it's 90 doesn't mean it is. So when I cover this up, I've got angle, side, angle, which is one of our theorems, so that's enough to know what's going on. So we know that the triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle because we have an angle, then a shared side, then an angle. ASA. So now let's write down the triangles. We got ABC on the left, and on the right side, well, angle A on the left side triangle matches up with angle C on the right side, so that's going to go together. Then we've got angle B, which is this angle matching up the letters. So B is going to match up with D. Again, we don't know the right angles, but we do know they match up. And the reason for this is because we have two unknown sides making that angle. Right? So they're going to go together. And then lastly, we have angle C on the bottom triangle is going to go with angle A on the top triangle. So CDA. Now notice, you could have written, sorry guys, you could have written CBA over here, and that would mean you'd have to write ABC over here. Right? Again, make sure your letters match up. A should go with C, B should go with D, C should go with A. Okay?
So CBA and ADC are right.
CBA, ADC in that order would be correct, yes. So that's another 5 points. How do you feel about that one? If you didn't see it before, do you see it now? Yes. Awesome.
So
Yeah.
I only put the ASA and then the ABC to CDA. So
You missed the shared side, so did you mark it on the diagram? Oh, then mine's full, sorry. Yep. Make sure you represent all your work, okay? All right, 5.
Yes, I put no.
All right, so this one was confusing, and here's why. Here are our theorems that we have. We have ASA, we've got side, 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 we've got SAS, and then we've got angle, angle, side, and then we have a special theorem HL, right? So notice that every theorem except HL requires 3 things.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah, can you guys stop, please? So this requires 3 things. HL is the only one that requires 2. Notice none of our theorems require knowing 4 things, and we have 4 things on each triangle. So there must be some extra information here that's not going to matter, right? Maybe there's multiple ways to do it, right? Or maybe there's stuff on here that really just doesn't help us out that much. Now this is a weird one. If you ignore the stuff I'm not coloring in, I think it'll become much more clear what we have going on. So ignore the stuff I didn't color. Maybe use a different color. It's hard to see that green. And I'll color this blue in a little bit darker. These triangles will end up being congruent. How do we know that? Either way works, forward or backwards. That's how we'll know they're congruent. That extra tick mark there is unneeded. So we know that they have no shared information, right? There's no shared side or vertical angles because they're not connected. But we do know that the triangles are congruent. So we have triangle ABC congruent to the other triangle. Now matching up the sides, you got to be careful here. A on the first triangle is this angle. Now you might say, oh, it can go with D or E. False. A is made up of the single tick mark side and the unknown side. So it's going to go with D. Because D is also made up of the single tick mark and unknown side. Well, that leaves B with E. And that makes sense because B is unknown in 2. And then, oh, sorry. Not E, my bad. Unknown in 2 is F. This side here. So it turns out F and B go together. I bet you guys made the same mistake I just did, right? And then lastly, we have angle C. And angle C is this angle here, and it's going to go with angle E, the only leftover angle. Again, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So not only are these triangles congruent by angle, angle, side, right? We're given angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side. But we also know something else about these triangles. What do we know? You didn't need this for points, but what do you know? What else must be true about these triangles? Anybody?
No. Sorry, Chief.
If all 3 angles are the same, what must their measure be?
Equal.
Well, they're all going to be equal, which means they're all going to be, well, they all add up to 180.
Equal.
So each individual one's going to be 60, right? Because they're all the same amount, we can take 180 and divide by 3, right? So they're all going to be 60. And if they're all 60-degree angles, that means we're dealing with an equilateral triangle. If all the angles are the same, all the sides will be the same. And that makes sense. Because like we were saying earlier, the more we open up the side, the bigger the side gets, right? So if all of the sides are open up the same way, they're all going to have the same missing side. They're going to end up being an equilateral triangle. So it turns out we're going to have something like this. 60, 60, 60, all sides equal. So these are going to be equilateral. So even though we didn't know before that these 2 sides were all the same, it turns out that they are. All of the sides will be the same, even though it doesn't look like it. And we know that for sure because when the angles are all the same, the sides are all going to be the same. Yes?
I have EFD.
So how many points?
DFE,
No, EFD.
EFD. So if you have EFD over here, then you should have CBA over here. If you screwed that up, take off 2
I
points.
started doing it, and then I was like, wait, that doesn't work. And so I just
If I just put no,
It just
Yeah, I
looks
think
like
it was
I
E
do
with,
racing.
uh,
So I'm
When
starting
as
off
soon as you say it looks like, I know you're using the wrong logic. It doesn't matter if they look like they're not the same.
yeah, I know. I was thinking like
I think it's
single
unknown,
lines
like
are,
it's not. He gave us B,
it's
but
like
he
the single
didn't
lines in
give us
that place, and then there's the 2 lines
You
after
roll
it, it's
unknown.
C and B.
Me too, like.
About how A. Okay, I'll come up there. It's easier.
I know what you're saying. So
Because there's like the 2 lines, but like A is not connected to 2 lines on one of them. But
I'm going to redraw this triangle right here. So here's D, and here's E. Good with that? And then that must be F, and E and F are the 2. So ignore this. I just redrew it, but it reoriented. Do you see how it matches up now? A, B, C goes with D, F, E. Because it turns out this angle will be the same as this angle. B and F will be the same.
okay.
Okay?
So is this worth a total of 5 points?
For this one, you've got 1 point there, 1 point there, 2 points here, 4 points.
I just put no.
That ain't gonna do it, Chief. Minus 4.
Yeah,
5.
I wrote unknown.
We feel better about 5 than we did before.
Yeah.
Again, the extra information. You have to be able to look past that sometimes, right? See if you have enough. 6. So first off, we have shared side, right? AB. Do we have enough information now to prove the triangles are congruent? Yes, by SAS, right? Side, angle, side. So we know that triangle ABC, that's the left side triangle, is going to be congruent to the other triangle. Well, A on the left side triangle is this angle right here. And that's made up of the hypotenuse and one of the legs, right? That we know. Here's the hypotenuse and the leg that we know. So A is going to match itself here. B is this right angle, and they're going to match. And then lastly, C and D go together. Now, one of the common mistakes on this one is to write HL. The reason we couldn't do HL is because the hypotenuse is the side across from the 90-degree angle. And we don't know anything about the hypotenuse, right? If we knew something about a hypotenuse in one of the legs, then we can do it, right? But we don't know anything about that. Now, somebody in my last class said, well, we do kind of know something about the hypotenuse. Because if this is A and that's B, then we have A squared plus B squared should equal C squared, right? And A and B should also equal the same C over here. That's true. That is true. But in order to do that, you need to know that these are the same, right? A and A are the same, B and B is the same. So it's really just using side angle side, which is what I've done over here.
What if only one of mine's right? Wait.
This is always right. Always, no matter what you write. ABC, BAC, CBA, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's the matching up that matters.
Wait, actually mine is right. I just wrote it in really weird. Okay, wait, so BDA and BCA, is that right?
BDA, BCA, yes.
Oh, so that is right.
I always write the first one in alphabetical order. So if you do that too, it'll be easier for you to grade it. So when we say that by Pythagorean theorem, they'd be the same when we do side, 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 really what you need to know is that this is a 90-degree angle and that these two match. So side angle side is really what we're talking about. Side angle side in a 90-degree triangle is basically proven by Pythagorean theorem.
Oh my gosh, I got that right.
All right, feeling better about 6?
So the points are.
Ooh, right, the points. 1.
Okay, so I forgot what I
God.
So, the
Did you
top-
mark it though?
No.
Oh, you did?
I didn't do it.
Sorry,
But,
bud.
so the top thing, what? I didn't do that.
Got to write shared side to take one away.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because there is a shared side. And that's
Oh,
what
so,
happens.
so you have to write that.
Yeah, either write it or put it on the diagram, but I prefer writing it.
Okay.
All right, 7. A lot of you guys are confused by 7, but watch. It's the same thing as the review guide. It's just turned on its side. That's it. It's the exact same thing. Okay? So, thank you very much. All right, so let's focus on the big right triangles first. This big right triangle, ABD, will be congruent to ACD. And the reason we know that is because they share a side. So I'm going to write that down. Okay? 1 point. Sorry, I'm writing in green. And now we have enough information to prove them true. We have ASS, which is not one of our theorems, but because it's a right triangle, we should be looking for HL. And we do. We have hypotenuse and a leg shared between both, a hypotenuse and a leg. So we know the triangles are congruent, so I'll write that. Triangle ABD will be congruent to the other triangle. Now if you look, A on the first triangle is this angle right here. And that's made up of the single side we know and the double side. So 1 and 2. Same thing with D, it's made up of 1 and 2. So these angles will go together. So A is going to go with D. B is this right angle. And it matches up with the right angle on the other one. C. So B and D go together. Or B and C. Lastly, D on the first triangle. Well, D on the first triangle is this angle right here. Does everybody see that? Here's our first triangle. That's angle D. Not the whole thing, just a little bit. First triangle's here. And that's going to match up with A on the other triangle. So here's A on this triangle. And we know it matches up with A because A is made up of the unknown side and the hypotenuse. And same thing with this angle right here, D. Unknown side, hypotenuse. So that's going to be a point each for matching those up.
Is that it?
We know that they're congruent by HL, which is going to be 2 points.
Minus 5. Can you go back to 5? Number 5?
No.
Cool.
I'll go back later. We're not done with 7, that's why. Danny, that's why. We're not done with 7. Okay? That's 5, but we're not done yet. There's another set of triangles we can prove congruent. This triangle right here will end up being congruent to this triangle down here. And the reason we know that is because we have vertical angles here. Does everybody see the vertical angles there? So now we have angle, angle, side. So I'm going to write vertical angles. And then I'm going to write 2 triangles are congruent. So the top pink triangle is ABE. And the bottom pink triangle, well, angle A for the pink triangle is, let's use a marker, is this angle right here. That angle right there. And that's going to match up with the angle that's made up of 1 and the missing hypotenuse, right, or the hypotenuse. And we have 1 and the hypotenuse here. That's going to match up with this. So A and D are going to go together. B and C are going to go together because they're both right angles. And then lastly, E will go together with itself because of the vertical angles. So we have ABE matching with DCE. E goes together with itself, A and D go together, B and C go together. And we know they're congruent by angle, angle, side. Again, we can't say HL for the small ones because we don't know anything about the hypotenuse, right? That would require a hypotenuse and a leg, and we don't know anything about that. All we know is 2 angles and a side. So that's another 5 points for that.
So that's 10.
That's 10 on the bottom one. So we have 10 plus 4, which is 14. Plus, plus 5, which is 19. Plus 5 again, which is 24. So we have 24 points on this side, and we have 11 points on the front side for a total of 35. We'll get to self-development in a second. So here's what you got to do first. First, calculate your score out of 35. Subtract the number wrong out of 35. So if you missed 3,
6.
you would get a 32 out of 35. Now, as it turns out, anything above a 21.5 is a 65 or above, which means you're going to go on to the bonus point stage, okay?
15.
So if you got a 22 or above, you're good.
Oh.
Anything higher than 21.5 is passing.
I got a 20.
If you didn't get above a 21.5, again, 22 and above, then you don't go on to this stage. If you did, you go on to this one. And you're right out of 45.
David, what'd you get?
So if you missed 0 on the first one, that'd be a 35 out of 35. That passes, right? That's bigger than a 21.5.
I did.
Then you would do minus 0 out of 45, which is, again, a 45 out of 45. Notice that you would not write 35 out of 45 if you got a 35 out of 35 here, right? Because that would be a worse grade. 100% is 35 out of 35 here, or 35 out of 45 here. That would not be 100%, right? So make sure you subtract the total, subtract from the total amount. So if you missed 4, you get a 31, right? Which is better than a 21.5. So then you move on. Then you subtract 4 from this. That'd be a 41, right? Then you're around to 2 decimal places. So for instance, if you missed 10, you would have gotten a 35 or a 25 out of 35. Notice a 25 is better than a 21.5, so you would go on to the next stage.
I got a 57.
So if you missed 10, you would have gotten a 35 out of 45, which is this. You would round that to 77.78. Don't just call it a 77. That's cutting yourself short. Don't call it a 78, because that's putting on more points than you deserve. It's a 77.78. You'd round it to 2 decimal places.
57.9.
You don't need to bother with that because that's just a retake, right?
So
You try retake.
So what do we do? Like the
For retakes?
No,
Um,
absent.
Say again.
Absent.
The what?
Absent.
If you were absent?
You were going.
Wonderful. I'm not putting the grade in either way unless it was an amazing grade, right?
So it's just done.
So I just won't put it in. However, you do need to retake it because it will be a 0 after this week. Okay?
After this
So when I go to plug it in this weekend,
But
I will plug it in as a 0.
I don't have
Right?
any homeroom this week.
So for people that are worried about eligibility and people that are worried about I was absent last week, great. You have all week to come in and correct it. Okay?
I don't have any.
Then it'll be a
homeroom
0.
this week.
Then you'll get to fix it whenever you want, as long as it's before the end of the semester or end of the quarter.
Can I do it during class?
Yes.
Can I retake it? Knowing I can get a 3?
That would be the idea. Yes. You're gonna
No,
come in.
wait, no, I got above I got above a 65. I mean.
Yeah, you can always retake it. Yeah.
'Cause I
If
know
you got above a 65, all you have to do is say I'd like to retake it, and what I'll do is I'll make a different version of this quiz. It'll probably be a little bit harder, right? Because I tried to give you all the easy ones the first time, right? Sorry. I'm trying to be nice. So now to make a different version, I had to put hard ones on there. It's not me trying to be nice.
So, can I come in?
And then you retake it, okay? They will be a lot harder. Right?
Self-development.
Self-development. Let's talk about that.
Mr.
Yeah, make sure you counted the number wrong, not the number right. That can screw you over when you do points. All right, so for this one, check it out. Actually, can I collect these first?
Can I come in?
Absolutely. I've got nobody in homeroom right now. So if you would all come in now, I can teach you all at once. That'd be way more efficient for me.
Yeah, they screwed
So I would love for you guys to all come in at once.
Where are we coming in?
You can come in during homeroom day if you want. Yeah, if you guys all come in at once, I can teach you all at once, then we can retake it all at once the next day. That would be amazing.
I actually passed this one.
Because usually what happens is I have one person come in to retake the quiz, and then right after I'm done teaching them, the next person comes in to retake the same quiz, and I have to reteach the same thing. So if I can teach it just, once, that'd be ideal.
Freshmen can't come in this week during
Not at all. That's a bummer.
Yeah, we can't.
I've got support after school as well. Game club today.
I had practice.
I hear you. So that sounds like a job for you to figure out, right? So I'll be here. You just tell me when you want me to be here, and I'll be here, okay?
Alright, I'll be here today.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not blaming you for having a tough
I'm
schedule.
thinking.
All I'm saying is that I see your schedule, and I know it's difficult, so you just need to come and see me when you can. I don't know when that is, but I'll make it happen, okay?
Travis said.
I know a lot of kids are used to like, I'm too busy, I can't do this, and the teacher's like, no, you're not. That's not me. I'm like, yes, you are busy, so tell me when you can. Right? I hear you. You are busy. I don't know how I can help, but if I can't help, I will. All right, so for self-development, a couple ways to do it. One, because I know that this big triangle, ACD, has two shared angles here and here, I know that the opposite sides will be congruent as well. It turns out that triangle ACD is isosceles. And it's not because it looks like it, right? It's because these angles are shared. Isosceles triangles have two shared angles or two shared sides. And one implies the other, meaning that if you have two shared angles, you're going to have two shared sides. If you have two shared sides, you will have two shared angles. Okay? So we know it's isosceles. And now I have enough information to solve because I've got a shared side here. And now I've got, if I do LPT, linear pair theorem, I can get this right angle down here. So I know that angle CBA equals 90 degrees by linear pair theorem. Something like that. Right, this is a linear pair, two angles on a line. If that's 90, what's left over? 90. Right? So now I can do angle, angle, side. I can do a hypotenuse leg if I want. So even if I didn't use this, if I just use this, that ACD is isosceles, I could still say by hypotenuse leg, they're congruent, right? So you can do it that way, HL. Or you can do it by linear pair, and then do AAS. Cool? So when I was asking what kind of triangles are in the diagram, the key was to know that this was a isosceles. That was a little bit of a hint, right? And then that these two would be right angle triangles, right? Right triangle. Questions on that? Can you see it now? It was a little outside the box. We hadn't talked a ton about isosceles.
That's all you need.
Right? Well, there's two different ways to do it. You can either say that this is isosceles because the two angles imply the two sides match, and therefore now I have hypotenuse leg for both, right? Or you could say that's 90 because of LPT. I need the reason. You can't just say, oh, it looks like it should be, right? Obviously it should be. Why? Linear pair theorem. Two angles on a line make up 180. Subtract the 90. What's left over? 90. So that means these angles are matching. Now I've got angle, angle, side.
I wrote like a whole paragraph about it. I don't even think I wrote any of that stuff.
Bummer. All right. So that's it in a nutshell, right? So now I've got that from you. I will grade that this weekend and plug it in. So those of you that are worried about eligibility, this is a way that you don't have to worry about it because you've seen the grade well in advance before it gets plugged in, right? It's not like I graded on the weekend, you show up and it's like, oh man, I bombed it, right? And I had no time to fix it. So it's not screwing you over. I like this system a lot better. Yeah.
So if I wait till next week to do it, I get a 0, but then do I get full credit back if I do it the next
Yeah,
week?
it's not a permanent 0. I just have to put a grade in. You know what I mean?
Like I won't get like 10% off?
No.
Okay.
Retakes, you get full credit. Which is why I think it's fair when I say that 65 and down, I count as a 0, right? Because I could go through a really complex way of remaking the grade system, right? There's a lot of schools that do a scale of 1 to 4, or a 0 to 4, right? And if it's really bad work, even if you got some of it right, they'll give you a 0 anyway, right? That's done all over, right? I would rather use something you're familiar with, percentages, than just say, look, 65 and below for me means you didn't really know your stuff, right? So that's why I have it be a 0. And I think that's fair because I let you retake it. There's no cap. You know what I mean? We're not capped,
Okay.
right? So it's not like if you retake it, the best you can get is an 80. No, you could retake it as much as you want to get 100. You're also guaranteed to get a higher score or the same because I don't make you do the ones that you got right. And if you miss something by a half, I give you that point for free.
Wait.
So if you only missed one by half a point, right? If you missed by 1.5, you got to take it, right? But if you only missed by half, I give you that point back for free.
Wait, switch up the quiz though, right?
Yeah.
Could I basically, I missed like 7 points in the last problem. Could I basically just retake that?
Yeah, that's what it would be. If you miss by over a 65, in theory, you're supposed to go back there and grab a sheet and get it signed by your parents. In general, I don't care about that.
Heck yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna cut that out this semester. I think it kept people from coming in. It shouldn't, because it's super easy. But like, I'd rather you come in. Yeah.
So if I got 4 out of the 7 questions right, I only have to do 3.
Yeah. That's it. That's all a retake has ever been, guys. You can't get a worse grade. It's mathematically impossible. It's not just not being nice. Like, you will guaranteed get a better grade or the same. And if you get the same, that'd be shocking because I don't let you retake it until I know you're going to do better. Because I'd rather not grade it a bunch of times, right? Yeah.
Hypothetically, if you only missed half a point in total, how would you retake that?
You would retake it, and I'd say,
That's Xavier.
I need to see if you're ready, and then you prove to me you're ready. That would take very little time, but it would take something, right? I'm not just going to give you the half point for free. And then I would say, retake it. Oh, look, you did it, right? So it's not really just like you get it for free. You do have to show me that you would get it right. You know what I mean? So, but that's to be fair. That's the one case where it's kind of wonky with how my policy works, and I'm willing to make that wonkiness go in your favor. I always lean on the side of your favor versus mine. All right, so that's that on that. Yesterday was MLK Day, which was not his birthday. It was actually the day before, which we celebrated. I figured we did today with something really simple and easy. I've got 2 speeches, both excerpts because, as you might know, King's speeches were very long. He's kind of a slow talker, not like me. The first one is I have been to the mountaintop. This is the last speech that he ever gave. In fact, it was given on April 3rd. He was then murdered on April 4th. So here is that speech.
Thanks.
What's crazy is you're going to see this in coloring moving around. I feel like a lot of times the tendency is to think that this stuff happened a long time ago. It wasn't. This is like your parents' generation. This is crazy,
Depending on how
right?
old your parents
Like
are.
that is freaking insane.
Few of old parents.
Like my parents were around during segregation. That's insane. And some people's grandparents were around for the end of slavery. That's crazy, right? Like their great grandparents, I should say, not grandparents, right? That's insane. How close ago that was, right? So I think it's interesting seeing Dr. King while he speaks. Because a lot of time we just talk about the speeches, we read them, but actually seeing it is crazy. So here we go. Here's April 3rd. He died, was assassinated on April 3rd.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country,
Wait, did the bell ring? I can't hear you.
maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
We're gonna get kiwis again.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, I need some pineapple.
Nah, kiwis are actually good.
Shot the next day. So we have time. We'll watch it at the end of class. I'll also get another speech for you. Both excerpts, of course, because Dr. King's speeches were very long-winded. He's a slow talker. What? I don't know.
We're counting
Yeah.
my homework. My ass was send us.
Hey, what's up? Yo.
Where's Riley?
Here we go. I want my money back. Hell yeah.
What happened? Back.
Yeah, perfect.
I know.
2 hours last. Sorry,
See?
this-
I'm gonna figure it out too. Ooh, I have a child.
I thought you would say one parent's gonna be
Needs to
essential.
get their
There's
no need for these clothes.
my parents essential oils on that page. I was
You have it in the garage or like put down here?
Yes. This is so weird. What is he like in like 5th grade?
I've been there.
I know. It's like, you know, it's just a daughter. That's hilarious. I got my hair cut.
Very nice day.
Well, I'm definitely going back.
Is that Macy?
I saw that. Oh yeah, it's amazing. No, I don't do that. Like, she's like, I've been talking like this whole time. I was like, I came across my For You page. No, that's not me. Oh my god. I cannot believe you said that. Whose man is this? Yours. Not mine. Oh my god.